I've been thinking this through a bit, and I'm actually getting a bit confused. I go back and forth a bit. Sometimes I think legacy autos like GM are absolutely clueless. Other times I feel like I'm underestimating them. For starters, we can't believe anything they say, especially Mary Barra. Yeah, I really seem to have it out for her, because I believe she is the worst out of all the legacy CEOs, and lies the most. But probably because her company is in the biggest trouble. Jim Farley of Ford at least realizes there is a company called Tesla, and then Herbert Diess is probably the one I believe the most, but Volkswagen doesn't exactly have a clean history either. Anyway, like I said, I'm a bit confused about GM. It sounded like they had a path to help them with their alleged transition there, with plug-in hybrids. They could simply make plug-in hybrids for now and give their customers about an $8,500 rebate, enough of a discount to perhaps make easily cajoled consumers to purchase their pile of wasted steel. But is it me, or do GM actually have no hybrid cars, let alone any plug-in hybrids, but actually not even any hybrids at all? I believe they used to have the hideous Volt. Yes, Volt, not Bolt. Yeah, look at that car. Talk about generic. Where's the soul, the passion, the art? It's a disaster of a car. It was actually a plug-in hybrid too, but has since been discontinued. So wait, what? Is this actually real? GM have no hybrids or plug-in hybrids? Really, if I'm wrong or anyone knows, then please let me know. I thought the purpose of all this cronyism was mainly for GM's benefit, a way they could still sell cars before they built up their electric offering. But what? No hybrids? Okay then, so what is this bill for? It's meant to level the playing field as much as possible, to give GM an advantage over Tesla, right? And yes, they get up to $5,000 advantage rebate over Teslas, and also a $12,500 advantage selling electric over their ICE cars, which means they can potentially charge that much more for their EVs. So they can potentially scrape a profit, at least over time, except the Hummer is not eligible for this rebate because it's so expensive, and most likely loses money still on every sale. Supposedly over 200 kilowatt hours of batteries in that. I mean, can you imagine the fires they're going to produce? We've seen what a 60 kilowatt hour Bolt can do. A Hummer with 200 kilowatt hours will be some fire. It would go up in flames as fast as GM's reputation with electric vehicles, or whatever still remains. Right, so we have the Hummer coming out next year, and this Cadillac Lyriq. Cadillac, mainly a brand somewhat given renewed life by hip-hop artists rapping about the ridiculous Escalade. I was driven around one in Manhattan. It's not great. And I rented a Cadillac CTS in Hawaii once before too, and it broke down. It was just about brand new, and they had to replace it with an Infiniti. Oh, it was also a total dog to drive. Because it's a bit of a luxurious car, you might think. Well, so's a BMW 7 Series, and they handle impressively well. But the Lyriq, well, the cap for SUVs is $80,000, so I assumed the Lyriq will make this. But it's not really that clear what you get for the money. The website says they start at $59,000, which is comparable with the Tesla Model Y. But it also says that they have a 100 kilowatt hour battery. There is no way they could be selling these with a 100 kilowatt hour battery for that price. That's crazy. If they are, they're losing an absolute fortune per vehicle. And how can that only equate to 340 horsepower? Tesla gets 430 horsepower from 75 kilowatt hours. Translation, 33% more battery and 20% less power for the Cadillac. In other words, Tesla produced 5.7 horsepower per kilowatt hour, Lyriq only 3.4 horsepower per kilowatt hour. Imagine if we compared that with the Plaid or 4680 chemistry. This is a big difference. Everything I look at compared to Tesla is just shocking. Tesla is still so underrated. And like I love to remind people, this is Tesla when they aren't using their own in-house batteries. This is going to be such a huge jump still. Fundamentally, this industry comes down to batteries. And supposedly the Lyriq can produce 300 miles of range, which is what, according to Mary Barra, GM's customers say that they want. Tesla is hitting 318 miles with a 75 kilowatt hour battery. At least that's what it's saying on the order page. The model page is saying 330 miles, a slight discrepancy on the Tesla website right now for some reason. Model S showing similar discrepancies in range too. Anyway, the Lyriq is not entirely hideous like the Hummer, which is one of the worst interiors I've ever seen. It's almost as bad as the Hummer H2. Anyway, I think the Lyriq took the idea of going widescreen a little too far with 33 inches. At least they went widescreen, unlike the electric Fords. And GM are still selling their Bolt, which was the only other car to sell over 200,000 units in the US and exhaust a tax credit, aside from Tesla. The Bolt starts at $31,000 and will have a $12,500 rebate off that price, bringing it down to $18,500. And the Bolt is now an EUV, an electric utility vehicle, as it's clearly not a sports utility vehicle. Nothing sporty about this thing. So is the plan to just make tons of Bolts and sell them and hope they don't catch fire? This is not even built on the infamous Ultium platform either, in case it couldn't get any funnier. But 250 miles of range at under $20,000 and 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, these are practical figures. I don't know if GM are making any money. They're using a 65 kilowatt hour nickel-based battery. That can't be that cheap. At a guess, they're paying $12,000 to $15,000 per battery pack, and the car is compact and basic. Of course, any Bolt customer may also wonder when and where they will suddenly spontaneously combust. Not really what you want to be thinking about whenever inside a vehicle. If we compare to what the Chinese are offering, I think the BYD Dolphin might be comparable, which is actually over $20,000 if you remove Chinese subsidies. Then the cost of exporting it to the US with tariffs might be over $25,000. But this car only has 176 miles of range EPA, nearly 100 miles less than the Bolt, and is dangerously slow. Likely dangerously a lot of things. Well, granted, much less likely to catch fire due to LFP batteries. And BYD also likely don't produce a net profit from their Dolphin. Who knows, maybe even they'll get to volume production. Oh right, Elon knows. He says that's really difficult, speaking from the only one who's actually achieved that. But people are saying that the Chinese will flood the market with their cheap EVs. Well, their cheap EVs will cost more than a Bolt, with a lot less range and performance, from a brand that is a lot less known. This is not me trying to say that GM have a chance with the Bolt. This is me trying to say that I don't think consumers want to buy an EV just because it's cheap. They want Teslas. The same applies to the Nissan Leaf. It's currently under $20,000 now, as it still qualifies for the previous EV credits, as there have not yet been 200,000 consumers who've purchased an electric Nissan. They have bought the Bolt though. Okay, so GM already made terrible ICE cars, despite over a century's experience, but now they're going to try and make even worse electric cars, which admittedly they did start earlier than Tesla in the 90s and then literally crushed them. GM are not serious. They have to protect their ICE business. It just doesn't add up. And this EV bill will only be for the Bolt, which may sell a reasonable amount perhaps, but may not be making much profit at all. And then the Cadillac, which I doubt they'll sell many of, as they probably can't make very many in the first place. And GM have no more electric cars that they've shown us on the way. That's it. That's all they have. Granted, Tesla hasn't shown us many either, but Tesla are selling every vehicle they can make as fast as they can make them. Tesla don't need to introduce any new models yet. The Bolt was up to a high of around 12,000 units in Q2, but dropped after the fires. This is hardly volume production either. But if GM's customers can get $12,500 rebate off each Bolt, then they should have the demand. But remember, it's really hard to hit volume production, and likely even harder for someone like GM. Perhaps they may be able to get up to 100,000 units a year. That does still come in at $1.5 billion a year in subsidies for the Bolt alone, which I guess isn't nothing. But how does it help them progress any further? GM's Hummer and Cadillac also consume a huge amount of batteries, 200 kilowatt hours and 100 kilowatt hours, yet they are battery constrained. But they choose vehicles that will use a huge amount of batteries. These will also add to the cost significantly. The Cadillac's batteries are likely going to be well over $20,000 for the battery pack alone. The $12,500 subsidy might only cover half of that. Surely it will still be making a loss, not to mention how few units they'll be producing, which won't hit economies of scale. This is a marketing car. They will advertise it as the fact that GM can go electric and be part of the future. It's just a part of Mary Barra's elaborate dog and pony show to keep shareholders invested until she leaves with her big payout. Yeah, it's probably the shareholders that will suffer the most for all of this, but I guess a fool and their money are quickly parted, as in you have to be pretty foolish to be invested in GM right now. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.